I was angry at the fact that they both had guns pointed at me and I thought I was going to die. I was angry at the fact when I learned that he was a 6-time felon and in 4 previous armed robberies, he shot the people and this fucker's out of jail. I was angry at all that. I was angry at what I thought the police department didn't do and what they could have done. I was angry at people who came into the office and said, hey, I'm here for a renewal. And I said, okay, how long ago was it that you shot last? 2 years ago when I took your class, literally wanted to light the place on fire. I felt like I just wanted everything to go away.
So one of the things I've done lately is I'm letting the previous guest write the first question for the next episode.
Oh.
They know nothing about who the guest is or anything like that.
Okay.
So this came from, and the other thing that's kind of cool too is that it's not necessarily that it's planned like, okay, hey, the next person I'm going to interview is this person.
And they don't know. Yeah.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
So with that, what is the number one lesson you've learned about human beings given your time and experiences on this planet?
Wow, that's a good one. And I think I can answer that simply. Never judge a book by its cover. I've learned my lesson too many times with regard to that one.
What? Judging people by how they look and how they appear and what they say and
just how they present themselves. Yeah, absolutely. I've fallen into that trap a couple of times. For example, I did a Leosa qualification for a guy. He looked like Droopy Dog from the cartoons. Remember that guy? Mm-hmm. And he came in and I said, what's your agency? And he said, Postal Inspector. And I thought, this is going to be good. What guns are you shooting? An M&P Shield and, he said a revolver and a Glock 23. 2 of my worst favorite guns. And I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's, he's going to be a difficult qualification. And that guy shot a dime-sized pattern with both guns. I was like, you shoot much? He says, I don't shoot but once a year. I fell into that trap big time.
Some people are naturals.
He was a natural. Yeah, absolutely. And I was impressed. So I have done it. I won't lie. It's part of being a human being. You know, we look at people that come into our space and we judge them right away. In fact, that's what I teach in classes. So you're going to have to make judgments on everybody you come in contact with. Can they hurt you? Can they be your friend? Can they help you? Can they deter you? You know? And so I've got to make judgments all the time myself.
Well, and that's the delicate balance people will talk about all the time, especially when it's related to law enforcement, you know,
right.
Making judgment calls, making profiling calls. We all do it every single day of our life. The best example I ever heard was he's now deceased, but the comedian Patrice O'Neill.
Oh yeah.
He had a bit where he talked about, if I saw 4 skinheads walking down the street, I'm not going to wait for them to walk up to me to find out if they're cancer patients. Right. I'm going to cross the street. You know, we do it every day.
Oh yeah. You know, and I got to give it props to my father who never judged a book by its cover. He was a physician, spent time in the Navy. But interestingly enough, when I was stationed in England, he came to visit me at RF Upper Hayford. And outside a pub where we were sitting was a guy with a huge mohawk, tattoos on his face, punk rock clothing. And in England, predominantly, punkers, you don't want to get near because they will fight you just for looking at them. And my father said, I'm going to go talk to this guy. And I tried to, wait, Dad, hang on a minute, you know. Just because you speak English doesn't make you British. Don't go talk to him. And he says, I'll be okay. And the guy was sweeping outside the pub and my dad walked up to him and I watched the guy throw the broom down and I thought, Dad's going to get pounced. And as I started to walk to him, they both sat down. and they had a conversation. And I turned around, I didn't hear any of their conversation, and they talked for about an hour. And I thought, what could my father have been talking to this guy about? And come to find out, he just asked him about his appearance. Does it hinder your employment opportunities? And my father said, ask him these questions. This guy says, actually it did. I regret it now. He said, I'm a chemical engineer. I was like, what? He says he's in pharmacy school now, but he can't get a job. Just, appearances. That was mid 80s. And my dad, he could walk up to anybody and strike up a conversation, and he would walk away becoming their friend.
That is truly a vital, I don't even want to call it a skill. Mm. It's almost a natural talent.
Yeah, it's a trait
for people just to be able to strike up conversations.
Yeah. And
I really honestly believe that those of us who really excel in life are those ones, man. Sometimes you might take it as, oddly enough, maybe a knock, but if you could have a conversation with a wall, you're gonna get far in life.
Sure,
because your ability to just have conversations with anybody and everybody is going to be something that you could really lean on.
I think it's important, and man, if you can have conversations with anybody, the world is your oyster. Yeah, I really believe that. And unfortunately, I think with the way times have gone, people aren't as personable as they were in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even early 80s. They're just not as personable anymore. And they think that if you're going to approach them for some kind of discussion or dialogue, you either have something to sell or something to criticize them about. And they stave, they move away. Excuse me. I think it is a gift. People can do that. And I'm blessed to have a little bit of that in me from my father. Just a little bit, though.
Let's take you back. Let's get the full picture of you.
Okay.
Where'd you grow up? Where's hometown?
Well, I was born in the Philippines. I'll start there. Dad was the first foreign graduate of the University of Santo Tomas in the Philippines. He went there for medical school. It was cheap, but very good education. He couldn't afford it in the United States, so he decided to go there. After he graduated from medical school, the woman that he was courting, and it was a long, long court, her parents wouldn't let an American love her up and then leave. So they had to vet him, and that vetting process was the entire time that he was in medical school.
What time period are we talking about?
Late 50s. So he marries this woman, and she gives birth to me there in the Philippines. He graduates from medical school. He's headed to Ohio to do his residency with me as an infant and mother pregnant with the second, my sister. Arrives in Ohio to do his residency. And then while he's there, the draft comes. And he says, you know what? I'm going to join the Navy. I'm going to go in as a Navy physician. So he decided to do that. He went back to the Philippines as a Navy officer, was stationed at Subic Bay, created, basically it's a sick call because they didn't have that even. They had a little dispensary where they would dispense medications, but that was about it. So he created a sick call there. And then after a few years there and rising in rank to it'd be lieutenant, captain.
Did your mom, you and your sister stay here while he was deployed?
We went right back to the Philippines. And he gets an assignment. They say, hey, Doc, you get your choice of assignments. You can go to Naval Air Station San Diego or 29 Palms. And my dad says, that sounds tropical. And we ended up in 29 Palms. We end up out there. And at the time, Four Corners was the only stoplight. It's a flashing red light all the way around. And they passed that twice. And finally they stopped out in Amboy, 50 miles away. And they said, where's 29 Palms? And they said, go back to the light and turn right. And so we ended up out there. And as a Navy doctor on a Marine Corps base, His task was to convert the dispensary into a hospital. And that's what my father did out there in 29 Palms. So I grew up out in the desert, and I used to tell him later on, I wish you would have taken San Diego, Dad. I could have been a surfer instead of a herpetologist. I can catch lizards and snakes better than anybody.
Sand with the best of them.
I'm an expert. So we ended up out there, and I'm the oldest of 6. There's myself, then my sister is my Irish twin. She's 11 months younger than I am. And then the rest are all boys. Dad was, when he left the military, he went downtown, started his own business, and he was the only doctor in 29 Palms. So as the oldest kid, I was his accompaniment. I would go with him on house calls, emergency calls to the hospital, whatnot. And I saw everything. I mean, everything. Anything you can think of, I saw. And I said, I'm never going to be a doctor. And then he said, if you ever join the military, don't join the Navy. Don't join the Marines. Figure it out. And here I am, Air Force, So we stayed there from 67 to 77, then moved to Hemet, California. I finished the last 2 years of high school and a little bit of college, and then went in the Air Force open admin, which was a risk for everybody. Everybody said, no, don't listen to that guy. He's lying to you. And went in open admin because I scored very high on my ASVAB test. And my recruiter said, hey, you can change jobs on the fly, basically. You just have to go through your appropriate tech school. So I was Radar O'Reilly in the Air Force. I had a fantastic time. The only thing I regret is not retiring, not staying with it. But I did 8 years, had some fantastic experiences that really shaped me, especially as being the oldest child with nobody older to teach me. Things like how to kiss a girl, how to ask a girl on a date, that kind of stuff, So I had to figure that all out on my own, and I became an adult at a young age. 24 years old, I think I was ready. I said, I got a car, I got a job. I'm bringing home $500 a month. Mom, you don't have to work again. That's what I was thinking. I'm living high. So bought a house, had a new car, had a good job. And I said, I want to get married. And it didn't happen.
Taking it backwards just a little bit, though, growing up, obviously you're talking about following your dad to every medical call in the valley, pretty much.
Yep.
But as a kid growing up, other than chasing lizards and snakes, what else did you enjoy doing? Were you into sports or anything like that?
Yeah, I wrestled in high school. I still can't believe it, but I was a cross-country runner. I hate to run. I hate to walk. If I have to go to the mailbox, I drive. But
must be nice to be rich enough to live that far from your mailbox.
But it was interesting. I wrestled in high school, ran cross-country track, and that was really about it for sports. Believe it or not, I was very tiny in school. I still don't understand how I had a growth spurt after the military, but when I got out of the military, I was 5'5", 150 pounds. I'm 5'10", 240 pounds. Figure that out. And I was 28 when I got out of the military, 29.
I would call that a late growth spurt.
It was a late growth spurt. My father was even kind of mystified by that. So what happened? Are you my son? So I don't know.
Looking at your mom?
Yeah. But I was a really tiny guy. So I tried different things in track. I tried pole vault. Couldn't do that. I wasn't very, I wouldn't say I wasn't very athletic, but I will say I wasn't very athletic. But I was a good wrestler. And I ran cross country decent. Later on, had an old friend of ours teach me how to water ski, teach me how to snow ski, and the snow skiing latched on. I became a really good skier. Eventually skied for the Air Force on the All Forces Alpine Ski Team, which is like the military's version of the Olympics, and I represented the United States military, specifically the Air Force, at Garmisch-Partenkirchen in Germany, and skied there.
Silly question. Once you show that aptitude and you're representing the Air Force, Do they move you to a base that gives you proximity to skiing?
Nope. They just said you can take leave anytime you want to go ski. Yeah. And that was, like I said, it was like Radar O'Reilly. I can't even imagine anybody in the military now being able to do that. Just to be able to, I tell my supervisor, hey, I got a ski meet coming up and I need to go practice. Okay. And go. So 30 days out of the year, I was skiing, which was like an extra 30 days of leave. I skied all over Europe. It was a dream. Anybody that skis to be able to say you went to Val d'Isère or Garmisch-Partenkirchen or, any place in Italy, France, Germany, was amazing. So I truly had a blessed time in the military. It was a blast.
In Southern California, where'd you get introduced to skiing?
Big Bear. An older friend of ours used to take us on family trips with them. They had an older son, and he was gone out of the picture. My mom and his wife were best friends, and he had a boat and a camper, and said, "Come on, let's go." And we would go on family trips with them. And he's the guy that taught me how to water ski and snow ski. So it was a little odd, but I did that all through high school as well. And so I figured when I went into the Air Force, the only two things that I had were my smarts. I was a pretty smart guy back then, and my skiing ability. That was about it.
Did your dad offer any resistance to you not wanting to follow in his footsteps as far as being a doctor?
Not at all. No. I have two other brothers that became paramedics. One of them went through, I'd say 80% of medical school and then dropped out. He was a police officer, retired out of Beaumont as a lieutenant. And then the other was an arson investigator. And so they're both still paramedics. So yeah, that's as close as they got,
How were you academically growing up?
In my younger years, elementary school, I was a fair student. I'm ADHD, and they didn't have anything that would, or that they could correlate that to back then. They didn't call it ADHD. And
he just doesn't pay attention in class.
Well, it was worse than that. At lunchtime, I would eat a sugar cookie. I'd come back to my next class, boom, fall asleep. And my teacher would send notes home to my parents saying, your kid comes back from lunch and he's asleep. And, my dad didn't get mad right away. He said, okay, what is he eating? And I found out that I'm eating a sugar cookie. Okay, well, you can't eat sugar cookies anymore. It had the opposite effect as a Coke or an ice cream cone.
Right.
And so as soon as I stopped that, then I, started figuring out that, I need to have a different diet. I think I pushed through all that stuff in the military. I was a pretty bright guy. I know it sounds like I'm bragging, but it helped me get places in the military. Again, I was like Radar O'Reilly. The first base I went to was, I was really put off by it, but I put on my dream sheet, I want to go everywhere except California. And they sent me to California. Straight out of tech school, they sent me to Merced, Castle Air Force Base, Merced. It's the armpit of California. So I think Manson grew up in Atwater right next door. And, but God looked at me and said, you're going to go to this squadron here. So I was on a Strategic Air Command base, and in the far southern corner of the base was a small tactical fighter squadron. And I got assigned there, the 84th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. At the time, it was the Aerospace Defense Command. We were flying F-106s, transitioning to F-15s. The transition didn't happen until long after I left, but 106s, and then the other half of the squadron was flying T-33s as trainers. So I get assigned there. I'm an orderly room clerk. I went to school with all the girls to learn how to type, file paper, and then get to my base, and I go, okay, I'm going to be an admin weenie. And while I was in college, I did photography, and I put some photographs under my glass on my table or my desk, and the DO comes in, a little short guy, Colonel Sykes, Ronald Sykes. His coffee mug was big as he was, and he comes in, he looks at my desk, he says, "These are your photos?" And I snapped to attention. "Yes, sir." And he says, "Calm down." He goes, "Would you take some pictures for us?" And I said, "Yeah." And in my head, I'm thinking facility, inside, people working. And he looks over at my supervisor, Joyce, send John to the altitude chamber. I was like, really? Yeah, you're going to Mather to the altitude chamber. I thought, okay, great. Excuse me. I go to Mather, come back after a week at TDY there. And he says, what'd you think? I said, that was fantastic. Joyce, send John to SEER school. They hated me. I was the only backup, I was an airman basic at the time. I come into that unit and they're going to shovel all that crap over to my desk. Can I say that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. They shovel all my crap on my desk and say, here, weenie, do this, And instead, the DO's got me in a jet now and I'm doing aerial photography. So I did very, very little admin work at that base. Became friends with all the senior officers, my commander specifically, because I started this program called Air Force Now. I didn't name it that. Somebody else at Public Affairs did, but I did photography of our jets flying on different missions in formation over like Twin Mittens in Utah. And they said, these are great. We're going to use your photos for, recruitment. And they called them Air Force Now posters. So I did that. My commander there, Graham Shirley was his name, said, I'm going to PCS out of here. I got an assignment to England, RAF Upper Hayford. Maybe you'd consider coming. I said, absolutely. I didn't want to be in California to begin with. Send me overseas. That's what I joined the military for, is to see the world. So he leaves and 6 months later sends a message back to our unit and says, hey, if John wants to come here, I'll bring him here. And less than 3 months later, I was in England. So it was pretty fantastic. So I knew the wing commander, and I had an open door policy to the wing commander now I got 2 stripes. And an airman first class. And when you transition to a base like that, you PCS to another base, you get especially overseas, you get a sponsor, and that sponsor is responsible for them. They send you all the magazines and newspapers so that you can find a house and whatever, and buy a car, do whatever. When you're in a foreign country, they talk to you about currency and what to bring, what not to bring. And I get this old crusty sergeant as my sponsor, and he picks me up and I said, hey, sir, do you mind taking me by the wing commander's office? And he says, hell no, I'm not taking you there. He starts fixing his hair, I'm not taking you there. And I said, I'd really like to go see the wing commander. What do you want to see the wing commander for? And I said, could you take me by? And he said, okay. So walk in there and I see the secretary there, and I said, would you tell the general, he's a general now, that Airman Galletta is here? And I hear him in the office. Is that Abe? They used to call me Abe for Airman Basic. Is that Abe? Yes, sir. And he comes out, gives me a bear hug, and my sponsor's looking at him like, who does this guy know? And literally, that's how my career was. I knew people, and I made it my business to know people, and I learned it there. I learned who to talk to, how to get them on my side, the things I could do. When I say Radar O'Reilly, going to, skim extra copies from the copy or reprographics, or going to get, extra lunches, or, things like that. I did that. It was a true life, situation where I would grease the palms of this guy to grease the palms of that guy. And they were all my commanders. And so I had a fantastic time in the military. I regret getting out.
There's several directions I want to go, but real quick, just in my mind, every time you say Radar O'Reilly, and I'm thinking anybody listening who's maybe under 40, it's like, who the hell is he talking about?
Who's Radar O'Reilly? From MASH.
A couple things you said. You mentioned that straight out of high school into the Air Force.
Yep.
Did you do the delayed entry, or did you wait until graduate?
I did delayed entry. I was in college during that time, and then went in just shy of an associate's degree. So I didn't go in with stripe.
And then the photography aspect, how does that come about? Had you already been involved in photography?
I had taken photography classes in college. Yeah. And I was, as a kid, an avid photographer. My father was, an avid photographer everywhere we'd go. he'd take pictures. And then coming from the Philippines, you know, you can get really good Japanese cameras, the Canons, the Nikons, all that stuff. And so Dad had a whole bunch of that, and I latched onto that. And I really enjoyed taking, you know, pictures. So during high school, I started college classes. I thought I wanted to be a child psychologist, and then, and get this, an oceanographer in 29 Palms. I was still trying to get to the beach, you know, and then
chart the Salton Sea.
Exactly. And then I thought about being a veterinarian. I had a lot of things bouncing around in my head because, you know, in 29 Palms, there was really nothing. The one thing I wanted worse than anything.
But time to think about everything else you wanted to do.
Exactly. The one thing I wanted desperately was a motorcycle. And my dad wouldn't allow me to have a motorcycle. He called them murder bikes, you know? And then sure enough, one of my friends would get in an accident on his bike riding out in the desert, and my dad would bring me to the emergency room. He'd wake me up in the middle of the night. Hey, Dwight Cronenberg's got in an accident. Let's go see him in the hospital. And I'd see my buddy all scraped up, and I go, okay, I guess I don't need a bike. But I still try to sneak a ride on a motorcycle once in a while, you know? So that's what I wanted. We grew up with horses. I rode Gymkhana. I rode English Hunter. I don't really call that a sport. It was just something to do. But boy, does your mind expand when you have nothing to expand it with, you know, and it's just time and your buddies, the imagination. I credit my imagination with the fact that I grew up with nothing to play with, really. G.I. Joes, you know. And boy, did we have a blast. You know, some people look back in their childhoods and say, mine sucked. Mine did not. Regardless of, you know, what I had and, you know, what I could do out there, it was probably the best time of my life. Yeah.
You mentioned that your dad told you, if you do go in the military, don't go Marines, don't go Navy.
Yeah. But
being around 29 Palms and the Marines and Navy people, that didn't lure you towards that?
No. The Marines that I was around, I desperately wanted to emulate. My favorite thing was the silent drill team. And I got to see that, you know, my father being an officer, I got to see the silent drill team quite often. Spectacular. Get emotional. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. What a fantastic group of men those are, and women now. But yeah, you know, I looked at that. I never aspired to be anything like that. I always thought that they were light years ahead of me. And I know my Marine friends would say, yeah, we were, you know. I tell them all, your butt hurt because you had to walk and I got to fly, you know. But yeah, I really enjoyed the Marines. I didn't get a chance to see the Navy until I was a senior in high school. I have a cousin who was the commander of the USS Enterprise. And they had the Tiger Cruise, 1979. We were able to fly to Hawaii and then come back on a destroyer escort back to San Diego. And I was sick every single day. And I was puking. I'd eat all the good food and it'd come right back up. And I said, never in a million years am I going to be on a boat where I can't see the land, you know? And,
but you were already in your mind, you knew military was where you were going after high school at that point?
I got to say no. I really didn't know what I was going to do all the way up until graduation. And I had pretty long hair. I wasn't really doing much once we got to 29 Palms. I was just kind of settling in and meeting new friends. I got to tell you, in 29 Palms, I didn't want to move. My dad said, get in the goddamn car. We're going. And I said, but all my friends are here. And he goes, what, three of them? You know? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, you can make more in Hemet. So we get in the car to go to Hemet. And the first thing I saw was girls all over the place, you know? And I thought, okay, I can live here. You know, I'll write my friends, you know? And so at that time, I wasn't really thinking of the military. I grew my hair longer. I was on the wrestling team. I swam. I actually did leave that out. I was on the swim team. But I swam quite a bit, was in good shape. And then my mom, you know, Filipino girl, she starts yapping at me a little. What are you going to do with your life? You know? what college are you going to go to? And I said, I don't know if I'm going to go to college, not anymore. I did a little bit there, but I don't think I can go very far, with what I want to do. And in fact, I don't know what I want to do. So we're driving down the street and I said, I really don't know what I'm going to do, Mom. Well, why don't you figure it out? Be an example to your younger brothers and sister. I go, Mom, I don't know. And I glanced over and I saw a recruiter, U.S. Air Force. And I go, I know what I'm going to do. And I swear to God, I turned the car. She goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to go sign up for the military. She goes, no, you're not. And I went in there and I met the recruiter. I still remember his name, Rich Greiser. And he said, well, the first thing we got to do is, get you tested and everything. And I got back in the car. My mom was like a mouse, pouty face. I don't want you to join the military. I said, well, I think I'm going to do it. So I scheduled the ASVAB, took the ASVAB, scored really high. In fact, he came to our house to tell us, hey, your son's, he's kind of a brainiac. He scored really high on the ASVAB. And I thought, oh, cool. I could be a pilot. He's like, no. That's when I started thinking about flying. And and I was like, wow, okay, I can do this. So
now going open admin, was that something that you had to be sold on or?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because all my friends that joined the military and came back, I said, hey, what do you think of this? Oh, don't do it. You're going to be KP duty permanently, And I said, really? Or are you going to be putting flagpoles up or something? And I go, I kind of trust this guy. He came to the house. He met my parents. I don't think he'd, give him a line like that if I was just going to go dig holes. And sure enough, he was straight to his word. And so I go in and everywhere I went, when I got into basic training, they go, hey, you're an open admin. And that was kind of a sign to them that, hey, we should pick on this guy, see how he can last, And they did. They picked on me.
Was basic in Lackland?
Lackland, yeah. In the summertime. There was no red flag day. It wasn't, it's 127. We're going to sit this out. No.
You came from 29 Palms.
Yeah. I was, I had a jacket on. But it was fantastic. I had enough friends that had just come back from basic and tech school to tell me it's a game. And had I not had that, it would have been a little difficult. I won't lie, but they said it's a game. And so I approached it as a game. And I said, I'm going to win. And went through basic and found all kinds of ways to be sneaky. I remember you got a security drawer. And in that security drawer, you put your wallet and your personal effects in there. The other things that are in there are things like your toothbrush, your razor, your toothpaste. Toothpaste can't have toothpaste can't have toothpaste in the cap. Razor can't have soap scum or hair in there. Toothbrush can't have lint. So we go to the BX and I buy replica of everything, new toothbrush, razor and everything. Don't touch it. Never opened up that drawer. And I bought an extra shoestring and I tied a razor, toothbrush, toothpaste, and soap. Took the end cap off of my bed and dropped it down inside there, put the cap back on. It was like a prison, I was hiding stuff and they'd wake you up at 4:00 in the morning. I'd take that whole cap into the bathroom and shave, brush my teeth, and then put it back in there. And they would always wonder, okay, Galletta, how come your locker's perfect every day? I'm exemplary, sir.
Never touch it.
Yeah.
There's just dust on the handle.
Yeah. I'm just good about it, and then they're like, wow, and so, it was fun stuff like that. And I think growing up in 29 Palms gave me that imagination to kind of be able to, do things like that. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
When you got drawn in to do the aerial photographs, that's not aerial reconnaissance type. That's like publicity type photos.
Yeah, they were initially just for this deputy of operations, and they were just for him basically. And so he was appropriating funds by moving me into a different position. I had my own camera, so they didn't need to buy one. And it's funny that you say that because when I got to England, my APRs and my commander said, hey, John did aerial photography. Maybe we can get him to do stuff. So during exercises, I augmented the base photo lab and I would process KB-18 film camera, so reconnaissance camera film. And then I got into doing reconnaissance photography, which didn't require me to have a camera. It was a button I pushed, so we flew over a certain area and I pushed a button. The photography didn't look like anything that you would, recognize as photography. It was basically taking pictures of the radar scope and the target that the radar scope could see. So the photography would show both images so that they can go back and train. They can say, okay, this group of squiggly lines is this kind of building or whatever. And so I did that. And every once in a while I would fly low and I'd take pictures of the sheep in the meadows or would pitch up sideways and I'd take a picture of our wingman. But other than that, it was kind of boring.
And all that was just an ancillary assignment?
All ancillary. Yeah. All ancillary. In fact, I did a lot of things in the military that were ancillary that I actually don't even think there's an Air Force specialty code for, So it was rather unique. I was one of 4 custodians of our squadron songbook. What? You go, what? Our squadrons were old squadrons. I was at the 77th TAC Fighter Squadron, and we had a big leather-bound book of the history of the 77th from the war. And they're flying, way back. They were flying, planes made out of paper mache, basically, all the way to P-51s, and then 106s, and then into F-111s. And they did things back then that would take their mind away from, what they were doing. Excuse me. Let me just end this. Oh, can I get this? Anyway, sorry about that.
No worries.
Where was I? So yeah, the ancillary duties, they were very different, but I was one of 4 custodians of the squadron songbook. And these pilots from years before us were, they were fraught with the death and destruction that they were bringing, through the means of their aviation. And interesting thing is they would write songs about it. And
I was just going to ask kind of naively, are these songs made up by the squadron?
Yes, these are songs that you don't read to anybody else but the
not politically
squadron.
correct.
No. I'll tell you the name of one of the songs if I can. Is this open?
Yeah.
I fucked a dead whore by the roadside. That was one of the songs. Okay. And I thought, these are pilots that are flying missions, killing people, and they come back, and it's that morbid humor that they got to get out. Now that song came from the Vietnam era pilots from our squadron. There were several other songs that talked about drinking, talked about sex, talked about, there were morbid humor, and everybody had a call sign. Everybody's, one of the guys' names was Kelman, his last name Kelman, but his call sign was Kelmaniac. And you got your call signs based on something that might have happened or whatever. And in his case, during the rain, he was in a truck responding to an active alert, and the truck went out of control and hit the hardened shelter. And one of the British guys there said, "Man, what a maniac that guy is!" So he was Kelmaniac. I was the kid. I was the youngest, and I was also the only enlisted guy in charge of the squadron songbooks. Well, you can imagine what my duties were. Hey, Galletta, go get these copies made, that kind of stuff. But
at that time, historically, how far back did that book go?
Oh gosh, World War I. Yeah, wow. World War I. That book, our big history book went back World War I to the 8th Air Force in Germany, and then these were fighters. The squadron. It's I'm going to get it wrong. It's the logo is 4 7s and an ace in there, and it was the 77th TAC Fighter Squadron. So we had several pilots that achieved ace status, and So they use that in there. The logo's changed a little bit now, but still a very historical squadron, and I was very proud to be in that. So getting assigned from Castle Air Force Base at the 84th, I PCS to the 77th TAC Fighter Squadron, and the colonel that was there, Will Briley, had an interview with anybody that came in, and he says, "Hey, I understand you know the general, and he speaks highly of you." And immediately, I mean, I could do no wrong, because I came with a recommendation from the general, and he says, I'm going to get you to do this for us too. And start thinking about this. How can we do this? And these were jobs that didn't exist in the Air Force. There was no specialty code for it. It's just, let's come up with something and let's do this. So all those people were really innovators, the people in the military back then. I don't think I could have been in a better time.
We're talking late 80s?
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah. I PCS to England, 83. I left there in 88.
Going in, your plan was to do an enlistment and get out, do a career?
My plan was 4 years and get out. That's what I had planned. I said, 4 years and I'll get out and I'll do something else. And when I was in England, I mean, I fell in love with the country, first of all. Then I fell in love with the women. And then, I was already in love with my job. And I said, I'm going to stick it out. And I was part of a mission planning set that planned the Operation Eldorado Canyon when we bombed Libya. I was the first person in NATO history to ever complete an emergency war order error-free. And I got a medal pinned on me by Ronald Reagan. Now, the craziest thing is when they told me you're getting a medal, Air Force Achievement Medal for completing this emergency war order error-free, first time in NATO history. And I thought, wait a second, these codes and numbers that we're putting into this emergency war order dictate where we drop bombs. You can't make a mistake. I go, I'm just doing my job. Okay. Now, back then it was so archaic, we had a daisy wheel printer. We had a word processing machine. We had this printer had to have brass all the way around it to keep the from transmitting out to anybody that could pick it up, which was all BS. They realized now, but I had to type all this stuff and then put the paper in to print right in between the lines, because the message paper had red lines that you would put through an optical character reader, and you'd put that through. So this is the only admin stuff I'm doing, is doing all this coding and everything, and working inside an Intel vault. And they go, hey, this got sent to NATO. NATO had to agree on what our war plans were in an emergency, and they said, hey, this is the first time it ever came back error-free. Like they didn't circle one thing. I got invited to The Hague. I got a medal there. I was like, really? I just did my job. So I didn't feel challenged, in that aspect, but I did feel like, sense of accomplishment. And I made all those officers, all those commanders very proud. And that is, kind of what gave me the ability to write my own check. They'd say, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I said, after I leave here, I go to Germany. Is that okay? Oh yeah, we'll get you to Germany. And so, but I did what I wanted to do. Now, at the same time, I had people that hated me. And one of them was my direct supervisor. If I can find this guy, I punch him in the throat, still to this day. He hated the fact that I had everybody on my side, and he did everything that he could try to do to wreck me. Made up stories, made up all kinds of stuff. And that's what soured me on the military. That's when I said, it's time to go. I don't want to deal with this kind of stuff, because as he's doing this, well, he's got more longevity at that unit than my other commanders did. Funny story. I just talked about this the other day to a friend of mine. It was a Friday afternoon. I get assigned a new admin girl. She came from Albany, New York. I'll never forget her name, Beth Colantonio. If you need to edit that out, that's fine. Beth Colantonio. She was a little, petite blonde girl, and she stood at attention. Sergeant Galletta, Airman Colantonio reports his order. And I said, Beth, you're not in basic training. You're not in tech school. This is the real Air Force. Have a seat. She sat down at attention. I said, no, relax. Did you get moved into your dorm? Yes, sir. Okay. Do you need anything? Do you need to go to the BX? Do you need to go get stuff for your dorm? No, sir. And I said, Beth, seriously, do whatever you need to do. It's Friday afternoon. We don't need to do anything. You can go. I don't care. Come back on Monday. How about 9? Show up here and then we'll get you started on everything. We'll in-process you. We'll get everything done. She goes, well, I just feel like I should be doing something. I feel like this is a ploy for you to see if I'm going to do that.
Ever feel like your body just isn't keeping up like it used to? Life doesn't slow down, and sometimes the grind catches up. Lower energy, lagging focus, or a dip in motivation? Human Performance TRT understands the need to regain your edge. As a veteran and first responder-owned company, they're not just another telehealth provider. They take a full-spectrum approach to your health, crafting personalized plans that go beyond hormones. No locked-in subscriptions, no hassle. Everything is delivered directly to your door, so you can focus on what really matters. Already on a hormone replacement program? Transition seamlessly with recent blood work. No extra tests required if your labs are under 6 months old. Ready to optimize your health? Visit hptrt.com and see what personalized care looks like. Don't forget to use the promo code TDP for 10% off your program.
All right. You want to go do something for me? I'm going to send you to the supply. And you know how that is in the military. When you send somebody to supply, it's for stuff that doesn't exist. So I sent her there with a list of all the crazy things: the key to the flagpole, bucket of prop wash, 3 yards of flight line. But on the top of it, I said, I want you to get a fallopian tube for an IBM Selectric 3 typewriter. So it's 4:00 in the afternoon. She gets to supply on the very damn day that the supply commander says, I wonder what it's like to be a clerk. So he walks to the front there. Next, she walks over there and he looks at the form and goes, what is Sergeant Galletta's duty phone number? So I'm in a flying squadron. Now I'm at the DO now at headquarters. I'm sitting there. It's Friday afternoon. I got my feet up on the table. We're watching TV, and he's sitting in a room behind me that has like octagon glass around it. And I hear things hitting the glass. I turn around and it's him. He's got the phone here and he's throwing stuff at the glass to get my attention. And he's like, making these faces. Get in here. And I hear him. He's like, yeah, Bob. I'll take care of it, Bob. Yeah, you're right. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, don't worry about it, Bob. I'm gonna have his ass. Click. He goes, did you send that new girl to supply for a fallopian tube? I go, yes, sir, I did. He goes, that's the funniest damn shit I ever heard. He goes, consider yourself reprimanded. That was it. So the flying side of the squadrons is completely different from any other squadron. It's sad how the world's changed. The Strategic Air Command used to have a slogan on the side of their airplane. Inside that shield was a knight's fist holding lightning bolts and olive branches. And it said, peace through superior firepower. And every single country around the world was afraid of that bomber. Every one of them. They'd have nightmares. And because everything went woke, do you know what their slogan is now? Peace is our profession. It's kindergarten. It's so dumbed down that nobody would be afraid of that. And then you have the flying squadrons. Back then, as long as I can remember, Tactical Air Command, their slogan was wreak havoc. You know what it is today? Wreak havoc. They haven't changed because that's air superiority, and you need that, fighting a war from the air. And it's just sad that, the bombers, changed their mind and said, we're going to appease everybody. There were people.
The bombs are heavy enough. We're going to be soft.
It was, I was blown away. And then I thought, how can anybody go in today's military? And, I watched Pete Hegseth and I watched him say, I want to go back to the way it was in the military. We need a strong military. What's not to agree with that? So, but my time at Upper Hayford was a fairy tale. I lived in a couple fairy tale towns. When I moved off base, I moved to a little town called Instone, population 72. And there were 5 old gents there that never left the town, the village. And the village might be 4 square miles. They never left because they were children during the war and they can hear the bombs and everything. They were afraid to go anywhere. They're in the country, in a little tiny village. The Germans weren't going to bomb that. So they stayed there. I was the only Yank, as they put it. And
how many pubs in that 4 square miles?
2. There were 2. Yeah. 2 that I remember. There could have been more, but I think there were 2 in that town. And the one that I lived closest to was called the Bell. And I was very shy. I was extremely shy. And I rented a house with a roommate. The house belonged to a British Airways pilot. So it was a nice house. And it had a huge backyard that wasn't fenced in. And if you can imagine rolling hills that go down in elevation, and then there's a stream and these huge oak trees and then sheep. It was a postcard. It was a postcard for England, absolutely gorgeous. So I'm across the street, and it takes me like 3 weeks of living there to decide to go into the pub by myself. And as I got close to grabbing onto the door, I could hear everybody, you hear the silverware and the glasses chinging together and people laughing and everything. And I grabbed the door and I pulled it open. It creaked a little bit, and then everybody went silent. You know why? Because everybody who's in the city or in the village was already in the pub. Yeah. They're like, who's this? And I opened the door, and I don't drink alcohol. I'm allergic to alcohol. So I opened the door and they all looked at me, and I remember it just felt like my body was on fire. I walked straight to the counter there, and the guy says, "What can I get for you?" And I said, "I'll have a Coke." And the whole place erupted with laughter. And after that, they teased me and stuff. And but I was the designated driver for all my friends. The next day they'd say, "Hey man, hey, thanks for driving last night. I'm sorry I got sick in your car." And I say, "Hey, no problem. I drove yours." "Where's it now?" They say, "It's out in the sun with the windows up." So I really had a blast. It was fun. A couple of bad things happened there. I had a friend get in a car accident and lose his life. That was pretty tragic. And then Operation Eldorado Canyon, the bombing of Libya, changed the world. It really did. We couldn't get concertina wire to protect the weapon storage area. They just said, "We don't have it. You just post another guard there." Well, that morning, after the first bombs dropped, our commander said, "Everybody needs to sanitize, get all the patches, names, everything off your flight suit." So I was one of that was the other thing. I was one of the only guys, enlisted guys, that wasn't a real air crewman. Like, I didn't have an AFSC, but I wore a flight suit. So there were those guys that didn't like that, but I had to take off all that stuff and then drive home in an American car. Back then I had a Rabbit GTI that's considered a sports car in England, a Golf GTI. So it was, people saw it. They saw that it was left-hand drive, and I parked my car, and that night somebody destroyed it, busted all the windows out of it, flattened the tires, turned the windshield wipers into pretzels. And then I came out, saw my car, and I got jumped. I got beat up by a bunch of British guys. And that happened a lot to Americans there. That was April 16th.
Only after the bombing, or was that a regular occurrence?
No, that was, in some areas, they didn't like the Yanks. They had that saying, the Yanks are overpaid, oversexed, and over here. And the Brits didn't like us at all because, one of these young British girls would say, "There's my ticket out. I'm an American, I go to America." And so there was a lot of that going on. But those guys didn't like us, so, and then there were some of the older generation that initially didn't like the Americans because kind of the same thing. But they welcomed us there. And you'd talk to some of these older guys in their 70s and 80s that, survived the war, and they'd say, yeah, I hated you bastards. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're taking care of us. And I became friends with a lot of those guys too. And the history you can garner out of people like that is fantastic. The younger guys, no, not so much. They were just into drinking. They couldn't hold a job down. The economy was kind of poor in England. And then, their girlfriends would just go, hey, that's where I'm going.
So they weren't irritated or mad at you per se. It was more the American military, you guys coming into our backyard, taking our women type deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was, it was funny at times, the way you would get treated downtown. We would go to Oxford mostly because there were a lot of Americans in Oxford because of the school. So you'd blend in. I mean, the short haircut would give you away, and the fact that you're driving there, that would give you away too. But we would, mix in. We'd find Americans that were there as students, and talk to them and have fun with them, show them around. That was fun. But for the most part, when I went to this pub and everybody looked at me, it's kind of creepy because within a couple of days, everybody there knew everything about me. I thought people were standing outside my window going inside here like this because one girl told me, "Are you wearing your red underwear?" And I was like, how does she know? How does she even know I have red underwear? And well, I hung it on the line outside, didn't have a dryer. So I had a washing machine, didn't have a dryer, I'd hang it up on the line outside. And they paid attention to that. It was pretty crazy. And the fact that I didn't drink alcohol was very strange to them because most kids start drinking at 16. That's a part of their lifestyle. They drink for lunch and dinner. Really didn't see anybody drink for breakfast, but I think some of them did. But alcohol was a big thing. And because I didn't drink, I was kind of this, outcast. What are you doing in the pub then if you don't drink? You got to drink something, I'll drink a Coke, so.
How did you learn that you were allergic to alcohol?
When I was 15, saw the taillights of my parents' car leaving, and I said, I'm going to have a party. And we got into my dad's liquor cabinet. And Dad didn't drink even, he had it there for people that came over. And I got into some Jim Beam and ended up in the hospital. Felt like somebody was choking me. And it's that, Mom's Filipino, so I have that Asian gene in me that doesn't break alcohol down. Found that out. My sister has it a little bit, then my brothers don't. So they're luscious. They can drink all the time. I'm the only one that really can't drink. Mom and Dad didn't drink either. So, but found that out, and it wasn't pretty. So I stuck with it. I'm glad I did. I think I probably would have been worse off than I am now.
You mentioned butting heads, having a problem with your immediate supervisor while you were in England. If you could have gotten to Germany, wouldn't you have gotten away from him? And
I would have.
Would that have changed? You said you got soured on the military. I'm just kind of wondering if you'd have just gotten a little bit of distance away, could you have regained it?
I think I could have been fine in Germany. If I had gone over there, I wouldn't know anybody. Like my commanders weren't there. The people that looked out for me weren't there.
It was kind of a catch-22.
Yeah. I felt like that was my home. I seriously contemplated living in England on a permanent basis. For a little while, I had a girlfriend, very, very sweet, great family. My neighbors were fantastic. The Brits that I knew, they were just, lovely people. And the only thing that was, keeping me there were those people. My job at the time wasn't. I hated my supervisor, and he hated me. It was a very sticky situation that we were in. I was the security manager in the vault. So I'd go ask everybody at the end of the day, does anybody have classified out? And they'd say, oh yeah, I have this message. I'm working on this, or I'm working on that. I'll be done in a few minutes. And then it was my responsibility to put that back in there, sign the safe off, close the drawer, spin the knob. Well, one of the rules in the Intel vault was that you cannot bring any personal property inside there. And my supervisor did. He was in the Air War College at the time, so he brought all his books in, and he set his books down on a particular message. Now, you know, you hear unclassified, secret, top secret. We had unclassified, secret, top secret, cosmic top secret atomo, CTSA. Cosmic top secret atomo messages were relating to nuclear weapons and NATO. If it was just top secret nuclear weapons, that's all that would be. He laid his books on a CTSA message. And when he picked up his books, he picked up that message and he exited the vault with it. Well, what happened is he realized when he got home, shit, I have this message. And as a major, they'll kick me out. You know, I will go to jail for having this message. It's that serious, that kind of thing. And so he came back in the next day and he went to the vault. He said, "Who signed the vault off last night?" And I said, "I did." And he said, "Well, there's a message missing. We got to find it. We're looking all over for it. Pretty soon he comes back and he blames it on me. He says, we got to find this message. He runs it all the way up to the flag, all the way up the flagpole to the wing commander and says, "Galletta signed this off and it's not there anymore." And so then this guy developed a whole list of lies about me. I was a Sergeant E4 at the time. I had a brand new car and I lived in a brand new house off base. And he made up this story about me. Hey, well, maybe he's selling secrets. Maybe he's involved in espionage because I'm a major and I can't move off base. I have my kids, I live on base. So he spun up this whole thing and went to people who didn't know me and interviewed them what they thought of me. And they're like, "Well, yeah, that makes sense. Guy's a, Buck Sergeant E4. He's got a brand new car and a brand new house. How can he afford that?" They didn't know. They didn't know about my, background and what I did. My dad was well off. We weren't a wealthy family, but my dad bought the house with me. I bought the car, saved up my money, and bought the car. And it was hell that I had to go through. He made up stories about me doing all kinds of stuff. The one that really got him was the fact that two people said that they witnessed me drunk in a pub. And those are the people that didn't know that I was allergic to alcohol. So I got a JAG and, fought this thing for about a year. He demoted me. I don't know how that was even able to work out. He demoted me, revoked my security clearance, put me into the admin office, and I was doing admin work for about a year. And then one day he came into the office. He said, "I don't want you going anywhere. I want you to answer the phone." And back then, you had a answering machine with a cassette tape message in there. And he left, and I remember telling myself, "I'm not going to answer the fucking phone. Screw this guy." So he leaves. Phone rings like 10 minutes later, and I thought, wonder if it's him. So I let it go to the answering machine. It was his wife. Ross, pick up the phone. Listen to the radio. I turn the radio on. Why is that story about the Gulf of Sidra important to her? Because unless you had that message, it was nothing. So I go, wait a second. I listen to her message, listen, turn on the radio, listen to what's going on in the Gulf of Sidra. Oh my God, it's happening. Well, that message specifically talked about, and I can say it now because it's unclassed, specifically talked about the Navy SEALs storming the oil platforms in the Gulf of Sidra where the terrorists were throwing mines into the ocean and British battleships were getting sunk. So the SEALs were being deployed, and that message was talking about that operation. And I heard that and I go, shit. So I take the cassette tape out and I go running out of the office and I bump into him. He goes, "Where are you going?" Like, "See ya." I went right to OSI, and the guy in there, I knew him. I said, "Hey, S.A. Moboxo was his name. Hey, listen to this tape." And they went to his house and found the message. And I was vindicated. But I went through a year of that. I went through a year of just shit. And that's what soured me on the military. That was the toughest time in my life because I didn't do anything wrong. I was being accused of doing something wrong. I was stressed beyond belief because I knew that if I exited the military with anything other than an honorable, my life's over, my life's over. So, like I said, I got vindicated, talked to the inspector general. They reversed everything. I got my rank back. I didn't get my pay back, but I got my rank back, got my time in service back. I don't know why they didn't ever pay me my money back for the year. But I separated. Well, basically what I did is I told the wing commander, I said, I think I'm done, boss. I just think I want to go home. A lot of my friends had PCS'd already because, you're there 18 months and then leave. The flying guys are there 2 years. So it's just a few more months and then they leave. And the majority of my friends were the flying guys because I flew with them. So they started, picking off one at a time. And then I said, yeah, it's time for me to go. And a new bunch of guys came in and they were very different than the guys I hung out with. And I went to the boss and I said, it's time for me to leave. And he's like, is there anything I can do to keep you? I go, no, I think it's my time. And
silly question.
Yeah.
When this whole thing started spinning up, couldn't the wing commander kind of put I'm not saying make it go away, but at least kind of bring a level of, hey, let's think about this for a second.
He stayed completely out of it. And that kind of hurt my feelings. And the two colonels, Riddick and Latulip, who I love these guys. Latulip just passed not too long ago. I'm in contact with his son, but I love those guys. They really, really stuck. I mean, they stuck their neck out for me all the time. And I ensured I didn't do anything bad enough to get it chopped off, but they stood up for me. They were the endorsers on my airman performance reports, on my APRs. They would always endorse me and say, promote this hard charging NCO, promote immediately. They would always say that. And then I get this APR that went from straight nines. In the Air Force at the time, it was straight nines was the highest you can get. I went from straight nine to 3, and discharge immediately, untrustworthy, lying, they put all this stuff in my APR, which they really can't. They can't give an opinion. They have to give fact. So I fought all that stuff and got those APRs thrown out. And then my very next APR, 9s and another, meritorious achievement medal. And that was, I was like, shit, I lost that time. And then when I went back to them, Riddick and Latulip and now it's Thompson because Shirley left. I knew Thompson too. He was at our squadron in Castle. Thompson comes in and they all go, oh, we'll endorse your APR. But because it was an officer under their command, they said, we're going to let this play out. They didn't want to go in there and overrule the guy just in case he's right. So I understood that and I respected it. And when I went back there, they said, no hard feelings. I go, absolutely not. No hard feelings. At least you didn't attack me like this guy did. And then when I was vindicated, then you came in and said, yeah, give him all his shit back. Get him whatever he needs. And so it was 1985.
Coming to the end of your second enlistment?
Let's see. Yes, I'm coming to the end of my second enlistment when I re-enlisted and extended my stay at Upper Hayward. So 1985, I'm signed to that squadron. I was the NCOIC Radar Systems Division, which has nothing to do with radar. It's all radar imaging and intel. So I'm the NCOIC Radar Systems Division, the 20th Tactical Fighter Wing. And because of my photography, I get recommended to go augment the 5th World Helicopter Championships at Castle Ashby. So my wing commander talks to the Army general on the continent side. He goes, I got a guy for you. Don't worry about it. I got a guy. He'll take care of it. So I was assigned to the 5th World Helicopter Championships as the photographer. So I go out there and I'm not working in my regular unit. And that's what started making this guy mad. So the message is gone by that time and he doesn't know what to do. And then I'm out all day long in a flight suit, doing photography, and then come back, and I'd check in with people, and then I'd go back out again. And I was gone for 2 weeks. That pissed him off. And that's when he started making up the stuff. But at Castle Ashby, it was 3 weeks prior to the marriage of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. So when they landed the Royal Wessex helicopter, as they're documenting it, she comes out of the passenger hold, and she has to be 300 feet away from him. She's not yet royalty. She comes out, and I said, that's kind of weird, the way they do all this, queen and king stuff. He walked in front with all these dignitaries. She walked at the back of the pack. And so second day we have lunch, and I'm wearing Ray-Ban Wayfarers at the time. That was popular from Tom Cruise, from Risky Business. So she comes over to the American side. Hey, can I see your glasses? I said, sure, taking my glasses off. And we became friends. She said, I'm going to learn how to fly helicopters. And I said, I'd like to do that too. And she goes, would you come with me? I said, absolutely. So we both went and did our introductory hour in helicopters at Kidlington Airfield in Oxford. She went on, I didn't have the money to do it, but she went on and became a helicopter pilot. Then she wrote a book, and we became friends. She still lives in LA. But that's where I started to see my direction. I said, I'm going to get out of the military. Eventually, I didn't know all that crap was going to happen. And then I'm going to go fly helicopters. That was my dream then at that point, being there with the American team and seeing all that. I had a newfound, hope for what I wanted to do in my career. And that's what I did. I applied to different helicopter schools. After all of that stuff happened, they go, what do you want to do? And I go, I want to early out. I want you to cut my enlistment. I want to go to flight school. And they said, okay. And they granted it. And I went to flight school. And when I got out, I landed.
On the Air Force's dime?
No, I went on my dime. The Air Force, I was getting out of the military.
Got it.
So I had done a few hours at that point. It was very basic still. And so I get out November of 1988. My parents picked me up at LAX, driving down the 91 freeway, stop at the In-N-Out, and I see a bunch of helicopters. And I go, wow, there's helicopters here. I was going to go to Oregon, Hillsboro Helicopters in Oregon to go fly, or Chugiak, Alaska to go fly. And here I am in California, an hour from where my parents live, and I see a bunch of helicopters flying around. I go, take me there, Dad. And Dad drives me over to the airport, and there's a helicopter flight training squadron or flight training school. And I walk in there and I said, I want to be a helicopter pilot. And they said, okay, well, this is the place. So I landed at Heiser Helicopters. I ended up getting my license. I didn't become an instructor. I just became a line pilot, but I did marketing. And I brought students in, I brought jobs in. I immersed myself in that, and we became the busiest helicopter flight training center in the nation. And so I think it's because of my dad. My dad was, the kid in his family that was the one to do something first. He was the first to go to the Philippines. His brother followed him. He was the first to go to medical school. His brother followed him. He did a lot of that, and they were firsts. And then my other uncle was a structural engineer. He built Heinz USA and US Steel. Then the other brother, Frank, was a chemical engineer, worked on the Manhattan Project. And all of those examples that my father's family set for me, I followed all of them. I did them all. And a little bit of overachiever sometimes. But I followed that. I started to do things first. That was my goal, was I want to be the first to do this. So we were the first to get that title as busiest helicopter flight training center in the nation. I bought the first AS350B2 from Air Special at the time. Brought that in and sold that. I was the first one in the United States to have one of those. And we did a lot of things that were new in the field of training students. in trying to think of what year that was. It was probably 1994 or 5. My boss was killed in an accident, fighting a fire at what's the casino out there? It's Yamava now.
Oh,
it used to be San Manuel. Yeah, he was in the ravine fighting a fire. They told him, the air boss told him, "Hey, Floyd, you're done." He did a quick stop and engine flamed out. He dumped the water, tried to do a maneuver to land. He was able to land up on the edge of a ravine, but he was very close to the edge of the ravine. He landed, but then the helicopter, as it's winding down, started to rock and fell off the cliff backwards. So it wasn't an aircraft accident. They call it an aircraft mishap, and he died. And then I figured,
was that the primary mission set of that helicopter company?
No, we did all kinds of stuff. We did firefighting, law enforcement patrols, student training, heavy lift, air conditioning, construction. We did it all. Movie making, did it all. And we didn't do it until I got there. And like I said, I was like, hey, well, we can put a camera in there. And people were doing that way before we were doing it. I said, we can put a camera in ours. I can rent this Greenlee mount and put a camera guy in there. And Floyd said, yeah, let's do that. And then we had the Department of Justice come in one day and say, hey, we want to see if we can get one of your helicopters to do a surveillance. And if we can get your support on this, we'll give you 12% of whatever we seize. And that was back when they had asset seizure. And I said, hey, this sounds like a good idea. And I Floyd would let me make decisions. I'd say, hey, Floyd, can we do this? And I suspect that the DOJ and BNE, Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement, had this set up. They were going to pull a van over in the Santa Ana River. They knew this guy already had cash in there, and they knew it. And they just said, hey, can we get a helicopter? And hey, if we get lucky, you get 12% of asset seizure. So we go and get this guy, and he's got $1 million in cash. So they said, 30 days, you'll have your money. And they came down and gave us a check. And my boss goes, get everybody a pager, put a police radio in all the helicopters, and let's do this. And so we did that until asset seizure ran out because they got greedy, started taking houses. So we did that for quite a bit. And then, the training, the movie making, all that stuff. And that was going to be my life until Floyd died. And then I said, I know how my mind thinks, being ADD. It's come out of the cockpit when it shouldn't have, thinking of other things when I'm flying. And I decided to get out and just do more of the marketing work. So to this day, I sell helicopters with 3 partners of mine. So I'm in that aspect of the marketing. I was asked by Floyd way back when. He said, hey, we got all these students. The only thing we do is we provide them helicopter training, and we provide them a place to live. When they leave, they have got nothing that says where they went to school. So I started dabbling with graphics, making T-shirts that had our logo on the back, and helicopters, making some hats and stuff, and got into the clothing business. Started a clothing brand, and because of the clientele that we had come in, most of them were off-road racers. It was very easy for me to pitch them on, could you put my sticker on the side of your car or boat, whatever? And they said, yeah, of course, you're one of us, you're a helicopter pilot, of course. And that's really what it was. So I got into marketing, got into branding, got into licensing. And when I realized that I could make a living at it, that was my goal. And that's where I've been since then. So marketing, branding, licensing is what I like. And it taps on the imagination that I got from growing up out there with nothing. I got 2 sticks, let's build a car. And that's pretty much what it was, So I thank my dad for bringing us out to 29 Palms. I thank my mom for, doing all the things that she did for us. And I'm blessed when I thought it was a curse to be the oldest. I learned a lot on my own, out of habit, actually out of necessity. And I meet strange and interesting people along the way, all the way. I have a very tight, group of friends. I know a lot of people, but very few are friends. And I enjoy what I do now. I have the best-selling graphic printed T-shirts in Boot Barn. I sell to all the Boot Barn locations. We have an outdoor line called Hook and Bullet Outdoors. It's all camping, hunting, fishing, hiking, whatever, barbecuing. And then I do CCW training for the sheriff of Riverside County.
How'd that come about?
So while I'm doing all the clothing stuff, I'm working for a large company that I become a partner with, BC Ethic, Blue Collar Ethic. It was a men's fashion brand that was sold in Nordstrom, JCPenney's, Kohl's. And I'm doing licensing for all that stuff. A lot of my friends I brought in, and we did all Carroll Shelby's clothing. George Barris, the creator of the Batmobile and all the TV cars. U.S. Smokeless Tobacco, Playboy, Brunswick. We did clothing for all those. And then that clothing was also worn on TV shows. And so I said, yeah, this is really what I want to do. It was a large company. It was a $52 million men's brand. And the two partners I had absconded with the money while I was doing other things. And I said, you know what? Let me see if I can fall back into law enforcement. I was doing it on the helicopter side, but as a civilian. So in 2000, my dad passed away 2004, 2005. I had a wild idea to go through the academy as an old guy, put myself through a self-sponsored academy and at Riverside. And when I graduated, there were no cities that had the money to hire anybody. So I waited. Boom. My academy expired. Put myself through a second one, which was San Bernardino.
Wow.
I go through San Bernardino, get out of that. Nobody's got money to hire anybody. I waited till that one expired. Put myself through a third one, Palm Desert.
You're a glutton for punishment.
I am, because I was the oldest guy too. And so I went through 3 different academies. And right after that, there was still nobody. But then at the time, Sheriff Sniff was in charge at Riverside. And he said, hey, what I'd like you to do, since you've been through 3 of these academies, is write a report on the pros and cons of each of them. And I said, absolutely not. He goes, why not? And I said, somebody's going to get in trouble or go to jail. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, you just don't want me to do that. He goes, but I do. If you do this, I'll hire you. So I did it. And it got their academy closed down. Riverside's academy at Palm Desert got shut down because of what I wrote down in that report. And so I got hired on at Riverside Sheriff's for a very short amount of time. I had an application in to the Federal Air Marshal Service. So I get through my onboarding at Riverside SO. And then I get the letter saying, we're going to offer you a job at the Air Marshal Service. And I said, I hit the mother load. I'm going there. And the offer wasn't a lot at first, you have to get in, then you get cost of living and location and all that stuff. And because I was going to the LA field office, which was in Irvine, my pay jumped up quite a bit. And I go, I did it. Finally, I'm doing something I want, and I'm a Fed. And that was the furthest from the truth. It was a joke. It was a complete,
Are you assigned to an airport or are you assigned to a region?
We're assigned to a region, but assigned to an airport at the same time. So the LAFO, Los Angeles Field Office of the Federal Air Marshal Service, had San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Hawaii, and Guam. And we managed those offices. That was our region. So it was really the best place to be because you can move around. You go, hey, I want to go to San Diego, or I want to go to Guam or Hawaii. You can go to any of those offices. Nobody went to San Francisco. So at the time, our locale was Irvine, and it was, I don't think it was 19 miles from my house, and I had fast track, and I just get on the fast track, go to Irvine, come back. And then they surprised me and they go, hey, we're moving. We have a new facility that we're building in LA. and you're going to have to drive to El Segundo. Really? 62 miles round trip, or one way.
How frequently are you flying in that position? And is it a scheduled?
It is for a regular fam. I was not a regular fam. I was, again, what do they call me? I was a program manager. Okay. I went in to be an air marshal, and I became an instructor instead. So I'm in the office. I'm a firearms instructor, and then I taught PRND, preventive radiological nuclear detection. Where'd that come from? My uncle. He worked on the Manhattan Project. So when I was in the military as the NCOIC radar systems, that was NATO nuclear weapons. So I did management of the Allied Strike File, ASF, management of delivery of those. I was responsible for writing missions with the intel guys, and then learning the yields of the bombs, which opened my eyes. Crazy amount of firepower that we have. The bombs that we dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima were 10 kilotons. The B-61s that were hanging on our alert aircraft, there were 3 on each of the 18 aircraft. 3. And they would dial from 10 to 710 kilotons. And then I saw that and I started saying, this is why we're never going to get into a war. No one is going to contest us. And I started really looking into nuclear weapons and things like that. And put, through the Air Marshal Service, I said, this is what I want to do. I want to teach, counterterrorism. I want to talk about nuclear waste, nuclear management, nuclear weapons. And I want to do this whole thing that they just started at the time, preventative radiological nuclear detection, where we would have specialized equipment from FLIR to go and look for illicit nuclear material. And that's what I did.
Does the Air Marshals have I'll call it a dedicated academy or a dedicated training center that all
FLETC.
Air Marshals? So
Yeah.
so you go to Georgia?
FLETC, yeah. Yeah. And it was very interesting in that when I went there like I went in the Air Force. I didn't know anybody, but it didn't take me long to know people. And I basically carved out what I wanted to do there. Same thing as in the military. And I was very fortunate for that because I did pretty much what I wanted to do there at the Air Marshal Service. I got our teams assigned to the FBI, to the RAD Nuke Search Operations, RNSO. It was the first time ever. We did things with the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office, DNDO, that they have never done. I wrote the scenarios for the largest exercises that TSA put on, called the National Level Exercise. And people started to go, well, this guy really knows what the hell he's talking about.
What powers you through your day? If you're like me, coffee's at the top of that list. So take your coffee to a new level with Trident Coffee, a veteran-owned brand that's redefining your coffee experience. Cold brew experts, their instant cold brew is a game changer. And though they roast their beans to excel as a cold brew, trust me, their coffee tastes just as amazing hot. Trident Coffee is also committed to your wellness, with ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics to help boost your focus and support your immunity. It's made for those who enjoy good coffee and value quality and health. Whether you're looking for that perfect, refreshing cold brew or a smooth cup of hot coffee to fuel your day, Trident Coffee has you covered. Head over to tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order.
Well, let me back up. I didn't want to do that at the Air Marshal Service anymore because I was driving 62 miles each way. And so I go to my boss, and so my boss, he was the former deputy chief of LAPD, James McMurray. Fantastic guy. He was like every Air Force commander that I had. Just a fantastic guy. Hey, what can you do? How can we use you? What would you like to do? That was how he met me. Then all the guys under him were all prior Secret Service. It was the first time in government history that they allowed one agency that had retired to come back in and manage another agency and get another retirement.
At the federal level?
At the federal level. So we had Secret Service guys that were on POTUS, duty. My second in charge, Frank Donzanti. Frank was Reagan's driver. He was George Bush's CAT team member or leader. All the guys worked with the presidents. All of them did. And they were, I could say it now, they were all retired on active duty. I said, I just got to get to know these guys. You can't get any higher than that unless it's the president. So I went to them. I worked closely with them on the things that I was doing, and I made them all look good by doing the things that I was doing. I said, you want to sign your name to that, Frank? You can do that. I don't mind doing the work, that kind of thing. And then when it finally came time to it, I said, I want to get out of here. I'm not getting anywhere with what I'm doing. I like what I'm doing, but I need to promote. I need more money and I need to do other things. So he said, where would you like to go? And I said, I don't know. He goes, well, write out what you would like as your dream job. I said, within the agency? And he says, anywhere. And so I wrote kind of what I wanted to do, and that position didn't exist. And then I went to him, I said, can you offer me any suggestions? And he goes, how do you feel about wearing a suit? I said, I'm fine. I like dressing up. Well, would you consider going to the uniform division of the Secret Service? I said, hell yeah. Where? And he says, Bel Air to Nancy Reagan. Sign my ass up. Yeah, absolutely. I go to my supervisor and she says, I don't want you to leave. But if you want to do this, absolutely, I'll sign off on it. I go to my boss, and I say, hey, boss, this is what I want to do. And he goes, sure. Donzanti taking care of you? And I said, yep, let's go. So they do my SF-50 to transfer me. First of all, I go over there and I have an interview. Our ops guy hired the guy that's doing my interview. So he calls him up and goes, hire this guy, click. So basically my bread is buttered for me everywhere I went with that. And I'm very fortunate. So I go there and they said, yeah, we'll take you on, get your stuff transferred, and let's go. 2 days prior to my transfer over to Bel Air, Betty Ford died. And they moved everybody that was at Betty Ford in the desert to Bel Air. And they were 2 people over. And those 2 people, I would have been the third over. Those 2 people are in a uniform at the Lincoln Memorial. So I dodged a bullet. And I said, I just dodged this bullet. I can't go there. I'm shit out of luck. What now? And then the deputy director, the DNDO, wrote a letter about how we performed in the exercise, and the DOE got that letter because they're part of it, and they hired me. So I'm a contractor now out at Las Vegas at Amargosa Valley at the National Nuclear Test Site, where I teach first responders how to mitigate terrorist use of nuclear and radiological weapons. So I do that on the side of all the other crap I do. So that's kind of how my life evolved, from 29 Palms to present day. I still do the clothing company. It's my number 1. My number 2 is the firearms training. And then when I get a job call out for CTOS, I'll go out there. I could decide to take it or not. And lately I haven't been taking them, but I could decide to take it or not and go out there and work with them. So it's very interesting. I keep my fingers in the pie, so to speak. I meet people that can be useful to me. Again, Radar O'Reilly, come back to him. Everybody he met, he could go to and get something from. And I was just very, very fortunate that I had the parents that I did, the commanders that I did, the supervisors I did. Even though I have a bad taste in my mouth with regard to the Air Force and that asshole, I think I came out on top. And, it's hard for me to go to any young person right now and say, join the military, because I don't know what the military is like anymore. I know what I think it is, and I've seen, propaganda film, and I don't think I can, with good conscience, tell somebody to go to the military at this moment. Hopefully in later months or years, it'll go back to the way it was when I was in. And I would recommend everybody. I would even vote for compulsory, military duty, 3 years like Israel does? Yeah, I'd say, because you know what? I came out of there with a goddamn giant box of tools that I wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. I absolutely wouldn't have gotten them anywhere else. I could have a 4-year college degree, a 7-year college degree, as an attorney or a doctor or whatever. I wouldn't have the tools I have, because I literally think that I can do anything. And that's the way I carry myself. I can do this.
You mentioned that you started junior college prior to going into the Air Force, correct?
Yeah.
Did you ever push on and get your undergrad?
At Merced, I got my bachelor's degree, a computer science degree that expired the very next day, 1984. It was all vacuum tubes and resistors, and I couldn't do anything with regard to a computer now. It like I said, it expired. So higher education, not a big fan of anyway. I think it's good for some people. I have 2 girls. One's going to be an attorney, and one works with special ed kids. In that case, that works for them. If you go higher education, become a physician, an astronaut, a pilot, whatever, I think that works. But the majority of guys that I was with had a simple bachelor's degree and did amazing things. And I doubt seriously that any of the big commanders even had a master's degree. These were guys that would fly a fighter jet wearing cowboy boots. These were the guys that were the salt of the earth, that did the most amazing things that I looked up to as a kid, and I still look up to as an adult. And those are the people that I aspire to be. I learned from a lot of those people. I don't think that it's possible today with the people that are around to learn the way I did. I turned 63 on January 9th. I'm no spring chicken. But I think I lived in the best era that I could live in, the best time. With regard to the military was strong then. People were afraid of the United States, and we had a gentle hand at the time. There were no wars until I got out, and there were wars. The Cold War, people kept their distance. And it was interesting how the technology got better and better every year that I was in the military, and showed us more and more of their hand, which was nothing. It was a group of 2s and maybe a 4. And that was all they had. And we had the aces and the face guards. I'll call it your wind down. What's your wind down looking like coming up in your future? Or you still got more ideas? Yeah, I got ideas. I want to develop property in Montana, tiny living, tiny homes, container homes, new ways to build fireproof homes. That's kind of my wind down. Do I think I'll get there? Not in the near future. That's where I want to go, though. I'm always looking at. I like technology. I like how I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to cool things. So I'm thinking that's what I want to do, is retire in Montana, have an office there. It's heaven on earth. So if I can retire there, that's one of the things that I'll do, is downsize everything. Excuse me. Build small homes and use them for residual income. Excuse me. I'd like to do things like Airbnbs and VRBOs, hunting, fishing cabins where people can go relax. So that's kind of my dream. I just bought a motorhome. I'm telling myself to get out on the road. I had an incident that occurred September 20th of 23, where I had to defend myself against 2 armed robbers, and I ended up shooting one of them before they could shoot me, and it wrecked my year. It did. It absolutely wrecked me. Never thought that I would find myself in that position. The years in law enforcement, the years in the military, never shot anybody, never had the need to. And then I become a civilian instructor. And based on all the things that I see, tell every student about a 60% chance that somebody in the class with a CCW is going to find themselves in a shooting. And it was me. And that day was the worst day of my life, aside from my father passing. I realized that when I saw a gun 2 inches from my eye here and 1 foot from my chest, that I had absolutely no way to counter that from a seated position with a laptop on my lap. I knew that if they found my gun, I'd be dead. They did search me, but because I had the laptop sucked in, I was able to conceal the firearm. They felt the bottom of my holster, asked me what that was, and because my knees were higher than my butt, my keys had dropped down in my pocket, and I squeezed my keys and jingled them a little bit and said, "Those are my keys," and it quickly moved on. It was when the one individual that had the gun in my eye was backing away from me. They both had masks and beanies on, and this guy had a hoodie that was riding on the top of his head here. It wasn't pulled forward. And when he looked down to rifle into a drawer for cash while pointing the gun at me, the hoodie dropped in front of his eyes, and I got up and shot him twice.
Were you in your business office?
I was in my friend's business, and this is where I get all the jokes. Okay. It was a massage parlor. The sheriff asked me, just got to ask you, what were you doing in a massage parlor at 9:30 at night? And I said, what else do you do in a massage parlor? I was working on a laptop. I was trying to give her, I've been a customer of hers for 8 years. We do classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'm beat at the end of the week. And I decided I'm going to go get a massage every week. This particular day was Wednesday because I was tapped out. Wednesday, I go in there and like I said, I've been a customer of theirs for quite a while. And she has the same 5 Chinese songs on repeat, and they're very ethnic. They go from a stringed instrument that's out of tune to horses galloping and a lady who's screaming. And I said, I can never relax in here. My goal is when I go in there, I want to be asleep in less than a minute. And if I'm asleep, I don't care if they leave and come back at the end of the hour and, okay, you're done. Just as long as I can relax. That's the only place I can relax. So I found myself bringing a laptop over there to give her streaming music. And I don't know how spiritual you are. I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, went to Catholic church, went to mass twice a day, was an altar boy for 15 years. And then I gave up the Catholic religion. I went in the military and never went to church. And after my dad died, I became spiritual. And boy, spirituality is what got me through that. Because I had, things racing through my head. I had a 2-hour conversation with myself that lasted a nanosecond. The entire time that these guys had their guns on me, and everything I did. And I went back, I get tight chested and emotional when I think about it. But from the time I woke up to the time I was sitting on the curb after the shooting, God planned every bit of it. And he saved my life. And it is particularly difficult to talk about because in that, what I thought was a 2-hour conversation with myself, I thought about my partner and manager, Kelly. She would have to go to my desk, try to decipher all the Post-it notes that I wrote with my messy handwriting, try to figure out which way to run the company. And then my 84-year-old mother wouldn't be able to see me in a coffin because this guy would blow my face off. And so those were very, very hard things to think about and to imagine. And I remember my heart rate going up as soon as I saw the guns, and then coming back down to a resting heart rate and accepting the fact that I was going to die. I prayed, talked to my dad for a bit, talked to God, and then I started to wonder, am I going to hear it? Am I going to feel it? What happens if I don't die right away? Am I going to be maimed? I started thinking about all this stuff, and I just, got calm and a little melancholy. And I had the laptop on my lap still, and And I looked at the corner of my eye and I can see this guy backing away from me. And he's telling me not to look at him. So I keep my head straight. And every once in a while I look over with my eyes and I notice that he's rifling in the drawer, puts his head down and the hoodie falls. I could never replicate how fast I moved. But I got up, moved 6 feet 11 inches to the doorway where across from where I was, drew my gun and placed 2 rounds in this guy's neck. He fell outside the door. Door closed behind him. I kept my gun trained on the door, called 911. And this guy yelled on the ground for a while. Told the dispatcher he's yelling on the ground right now. I can't see him, but you know he's laying on the ground yelling. And then she said, "Now what's he doing?" I said, "Well, the yelling stopped. I think he died out there." Police came 3 minutes later at the very most, and said, "Come to the door." I was apprehensive going to the door. I had my gun in my hand, walking towards the door. I yelled, "I have my gun in my hand," before I opened the door. They said, "Come to the door." I said, "I have my gun in my hand. I'm coming to the door." I opened the door, made visual contact with the guy. And he said, "Throw your gun down." And immediately I was like, what movies is this guy watching? If I throw the gun down and it goes off, I'm going to get shot. So I said, "No, I'm going to holster it," which at the time I was very calm. I holstered my gun. I came out with my hands up, backed up towards him. And when the door closed, I expected to see a dead guy in a pool of blood. And the door closed, no dead guy, not a drop of blood, and his gun's laying there. I go, what the fuck happened? Where is this guy? He got up and he ran 300 yards across the parking lot and collapsed in the market. That's where they found him. Crazy. This is a crazy. The story didn't end there. It was just crazy what happened after that. But you know, that was the hardest day of my life. I was calm when I came outside. When I sat down on the curb, I looked around and I knew I was in shock at that point because I looked around and I said, how come I'm sitting outside and why are all these cop cars here with no lights on? Am I in a parking lot? You know? And then one of the officers came over and he says, are you okay? Are you thirsty, hungry? Do you want anything? I said, no, I'm fine. And he goes, okay, you can go home. And I go, what? You don't have my name. I didn't give you my ID card. I didn't give you my CCW. You don't have my name. What do you mean I can go home? And then that's where the anger started. And anger I had for over a year. I came back and the very people that, you know, cared about me, the very people that were there for me during this whole thing, I got mad at and I fired and then hired them again, probably 4 times. The anger was brutal.
Ultimately angry at the kid for making you do that?
I was angry at the fact that they both had guns pointed at me and I thought I was going to die. I was angry at the fact that he made me do it. I was angry at the fact when I learned that he was a 6-time felon and in 4 previous armed robberies, he shot the people and this fucker is out of jail. I was angry at all that. I was angry at what I thought the police department didn't do and what they could have done. I was angry at people who came into the office and said, hey, I'm here for a renewal. And I said, okay, how long ago was it that you shot last? 2 years ago when I took your class. And I'd say, get the F out of here. And I remember Kelly turning around one day and said, John, you can't talk to people like that. And I said, you can get the F out of here too. And that's where it started. It was a week into it. I started firing everybody and literally wanted to light the place on fire. I felt like I just wanted everything to go away. The reason I didn't light the place on fire is because I have 2 pet raccoons, Ricky and Lucy. And I looked at them and they were looking at me like, I was like, okay, I need help.
Did you end up going to talk to somebody?
Yeah. First person I talked to didn't know anything about an ADD person because she told me to sit back in my chair and focus on a spot on the floor. And 2 minutes in, I said, hang on a minute. She said, what? I go, there's another spot next to it. Well, pay attention. Wait a minute. There's a spot on the wall. What spot do you want me to look at? And then I got mad at her. And it took me a while to find the right kind of therapist. My therapist now is in Dana Point, and I talk to her regularly, and she talks to me. She would do Zooms. She'd say, don't look away. Look at me. I want to talk to you. How was your day? You know, and I really don't like questions like that anyways. You know, how was my day? Fuck, what do you care? You can't do anything to make it better or worse. So I was that angry. And she said, like, she'd ask me questions like, where would you go if you could go somewhere right now? And I found that being a departure from where my brain was going, and that she would take me off track, and I'd say, okay, now I feel a little bit better. You know, we'd talk about travel. We'd talk about my raccoons. We'd talk about my employees. We'd talk about my anger, my sorrow, all that stuff. And she got to me, and it started feeling like it worked. And then Travis Lively came in the picture and said, you know what you need to do? You need to go with the SEALs down to Tijuana. And I said, no, I'm afraid of Tijuana. Can't I do something here? And he said, yeah, come with me. And we did the mushroom treatment with a chaperone in Mission Beach. And my God, you know, I'd always been afraid of any kind of drug. I was afraid that if I did anything like this, I would have hallucinations. And I'm a pilot, and even though I don't fly, I carry a gun every day. And, you know, I couldn't do it. I didn't feel like I could do that.
That sense of not being in control.
Yeah, that sense of not being in control. And then that sense of doing something illegal, you know? And I said, I'm going to try it. I trust Travis implicitly. And I went down there with him, and I tell you what, the next day I was happy. I couldn't believe it. I didn't feel like today I need to be happy because I did this. It just came. I felt like there's a load that's been lifted. It was a clearing. It was you know what it was? It was a cash dump. You know, clear the RAM. It was a cash dump. And then Sunday, you know, for months I've been saying, hey, Kelly, I'm going to buy a motorhome. And she'd say, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Sunday, I bought a motorhome. I didn't even drive the damn thing. I sat in it and I go, I'll take it. And that's what I did on Sunday. And so,
how long has it been since the mushroom treatment?
2 weeks. Yeah. And I want to go again. I absolutely would champion that type of treatment for VA. Absolutely. You know Johnny. I've known Johnny since 2009, since he came in the country, and he was a mean, evil person at that time. You know, he was scary to be around when he was drinking. A couple of times I had to call for help with Johnny because I thought he's going to flash back to something and lop my head off. And, you know, he went down there to Tijuana and did the Abu Ghraib, and he came back. He's a Muslim Christ. I joke about it. I go, you found peace, dude. This changed you. He's like, you think so? And I go, oh my God, you don't drink anymore? His new nickname around the office is Johnny Water. He is absolutely head over heels about his granddaughter, absolutely grounded with his work. He's a completely different human being. And I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy. You know, I worked with some people that did a TV show called SEAL Team 6. And they knew that I knew Johnny, and they said, would you invite him out? We really would love to have him come out and be a speaker. And, you know, it's the season premiere of season 2. So it's a watch party. And I said, yeah. So we would go out to Anaheim. It was at the Tilted Kilt. And I said, listen, you guys, you know, he's going to want to drink. Don't give him any alcohol. He's, you know, he doesn't need it. So he stands up and he talks to all the actors, and he says, I'd really like to commend you for portraying the Navy SEALs in a very positive way. The way you did it was wonderful. You know, it's exactly how I feel. Thank you very much, you know. And they go, oh, cheers. Here's a drink. And they shoved shots down his throat. And they didn't care. They went from red wine to whiskey to tequila. They gave him a half-cooked hamburger. And I bring him back to the office, and he's belligerent. I feel threatened. I locked him in my office. He got sick everywhere, and he used all my T-shirts in the store to mop it up. And I said, I can't deal with you like this, Johnny. You're out of control. Jason Tushin, I said, Jason, he needs help. And he went down there and did that and came back a completely different human being. I love the guy to death. He's one of my best friends. He refers to me as his midget because he's 1.5 feet taller than me. But what a change.
Mm-hmm.
And for somebody to see and do as much as Johnny and Jason and Travis did. I was a Cold War vet, the only thing I fought off were mosquitoes, but these guys are true, warriors. And they did a lot of things, unspeakable things to many bad people, that, saved the lives of countless others. And it's changed him. And Jason too, and Travis. And they're all, I'm just so blessed, to have them as my friends, because they have changed in a way that I really, really think all veterans, anybody, any law enforcement, anybody that has PTSD demons haunting them, they need to do it because it changes them and it fixes a lot of the stuff. I'm on a path now that is lighter and brighter and happier, and fortunate, to have met those people. I've been lucky my whole life. I've been lucky to run into people like that have always taken care of me.
I consider myself very fortunate. You mentioned 3 people who have been guests on this podcast. Mm. I've had the time to sit and talk with Travis. I've had the time to sit and talk with Jason. I've had the fortunate opportunity to sit and talk twice with Johnny Walker, and having him recount, his experiences, the dark hole that he went into, then going down for the treatment, obviously in his own humor, the way he describes just kind of going down there thinking, oh, this is garbage. This ain't going to work.
Yeah.
And then when it kicked in, it was like, oh, shit. But that's what he said. He goes, I came out of it. I was different. And, the one thing that stood out is he goes, I don't want to drink anymore. Yeah.
He quit cold turkey, and he was smoking a little bit. He quit cold turkey, everything he quit. Now, that party I was talking about, SEAL Team 6, he went there and he told them, I'm really, really glad that you guys portrayed the Navy SEALs like that. They got alcohol into them. And 5 minutes later, he has the star by the throat saying, you fucking pussy. You can't do shit. You don't know what I went through. And I was like, oh my God. And they go, can you get him out of here? And I go, no, you guys invited him. And I told you not to give him alcohol.
You pulled the pin of the grenade.
Exactly what they did. Then I said, okay, I'll get him out of here. And I had to get help to get him into the car because he was fighting us. And I don't know what moron decided to give him a cold steel knife that had the brass knuckles on one side, a window punch, and then a double-edged blade, and he's in the car swinging it around. I was like, oh my God. And I was scared. I definitely was scared. And I know what this guy's capable of doing. And to know him is, it's a gift to know this guy. Wow. And Travis and Jason. I have 4 SEALs in the family, and I know the sacrifices that they've, put in. After I had my shooting, I called my cousin, Jim Cobber. He's very well-known Navy SEAL sniper. Taught Chris Kyle how to shoot, that kind of guy, but quiet. Nobody hears from him. And I called him. I say, hey, cuz, let me ask you something. When you took somebody's life, how did it make you feel? And he goes, well, the Navy told us not to think about it. Just like they told Travis, just like they told Jason, just like they told Johnny. So what? Move on. And he said, I never got help for it. I never talked to anybody. And he goes, the anger that I have. And I did not realize this. I thought I was calling a piece of steel, diamond and steel. Hard this guy is. And he broke down that night when I talked to him, and he cried, and I felt so bad. So my goal, in fact, it's tonight, I'm calling him and saying, you need to go down here with me and you need to do this because I think it's going to fix a lot of stuff. And he said, yeah, the Navy just told us, put it away. Put it away. These are bad people. Just put it away. And he said, you can't get over that. So it is tough. It is really tough to see these guys go through that. I don't hold a candle to any of them, but I know what they've been through. I have had very, very, deep, intimate conversations with Johnny about the things that he went through and the demons he's had. And all I could do is cry and listen to him. And then to see him now, he's a different person. I brought him to the SHOT Show with us. Thought he was going to get kicked out or killed by somebody for the crazy stuff that he was doing. I brought bottles of tequila to give to all the patrons that came to our booth. Hey, have a shot of this. Johnny, where's the tequila? Because I drank that. I thought it was for me. So yeah, it's, I'm blessed. I've had to this date, the best life anybody could expect to have. Had, bad things happen in my life. I've had a lot of good things happen in my life, but the fact that they all, were responsible for shaping me, I can't complain about them.
You going to keep talking to a therapist?
Oh yeah, all the time. And part of my therapy is these guys, they took a chair force guy in, as they say, a guy that didn't carry a gun in the military. And they welcomed me in as family. Forever grateful. These guys are true warriors, and talking to them. I don't know. Do you know Lauren Jackson, Travis's buddy? That's who you need to talk to. Lauren Jackson, 24-year retired SEAL. He was our chaperone down there. Absolutely fantastic human being. And, these people are what makes the world go around safely. Everybody makes the world go around. These are the guys that keep it going around and it's safe. So yeah, I talk to a therapist all the time. My raccoons now are my emotional support animals. So fish and game can't touch them. It's like a letter in a file, and the VA gets to pay for my medical bills for them. So it's fantastic. I think anybody going through anything like that should consider that kind of treatment. They should also consider an animal if they can, because those animals truly bring you something, unconditional. I'd be lost without them, and I'd be lost without my friends.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share the story with me.
Yeah.
I truly enjoyed talking to you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I hope you make it to Montana.
That's what I'm trying to do, man. It is heaven on earth. If you hadn't been there, get in our motorhome and we're going to go, all of us. We're all planning it.
Thank you again.
No, thank you for asking me. I hope I didn't talk your ear off.
No, you didn't. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out. Social media, send me an email. The links are in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. If you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. And you can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave a rating. Ratings do two things. You can point out what I need to fix or change, but the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Also, please share it with anyone you think could benefit and enjoy it.